guys, so welcome back to video 2 of week 6, sorry. We starting off with a comparison of traditional budgeting, which is really incremental budgeting, and comparing that with zero-based budgeting. So incremental budgeting, as we said, starts with last year's funding, whereas zero-based starts with a minimum or a zero figure. Traditional budgeting is focused on money, whereas zero-based budgeting is focused on really achieving certain goals and objectives. And traditional based budgeting does not consider alternatives, whereas zero based considers alternatives to achieve similar results. And traditional or incremental produces a single level of appropriation for an activity, whereas zero based budgeting produces alternative levels of funding based on availability of funds and desired results. And so what we see is, as we said, is traditional budgeting or incremental budgeting is probably what happens mostly out in practice, and that's purely because it's the easiest and the least time consuming, whereas zero-based budgeting is the most time consuming. However, we find that non-profit organizations are most typically using zero-based budgeting because they are focused on goals and objectives. However, they are limited by the availability of funds, and so because they're limited by the availability of funds, they have to determine the funds, and based on that funds determine their goals or objectives, and which is really a zero-based approach, whereas most other companies already have the funds and it's just rolling forward our previous budgets. Alright, so other aspects of the importance of budgets or budgetary controls: communication. There needs to be communication from all levels of the organization, from the top down and from the bottom up. It needs to be motivating, so a budget needs to motivate people to want to work hard, but it mustn't be demotivating to such an extent that the budget is unrealistic and therefore it's really demotivating. We spoke about the top down, which is really an imposed budget. What we would like to see is more of a bottom up or negotiated budget. So in other words, lower level managers have input into the budget instead of having just to be told that you need to achieve this budget for the year. Then budgets is linked to performance evaluation, and just the biggest thing over here is, if your budget is linked to performance evaluation, you want to be in control of what's in the budget. So therefore, if your assessed or your performance is based on the budget, you want to account for those things which you have no control over. So if there's any uncontrollable items in the budget, it should therefore be removed when they are assessing your performance evaluation. And then other aspects. So typical aspects which is not controllable: overhead is typically not controllable. It's usually allocated, and so therefore that perhaps should be excluded from your budget if the budget is being used for performance evaluation. An alternative, obviously, to budgeting, as we discussed, is activity-based budgeting, but again, this is quite complex and quite specialized. Alright, so that is really your notes. What I've mentioned now is really the highlights of the discussion points of your notes. You can go through it. Just the key again to highlight is really that budgets is for planning, coordinating activities, communicating the plan, motivating managers, controlling activities, and for performance evaluation. So that's the theory that you have to know, which you can study from the textbook and read through these notes. I've highlighted the more important principles, and in the next video we're going to start going into the more calculation aspects of budgeting. Alright, see you soon.